Live.
Hi everyone, welcome once again to an Unearthly podcast. It's a little late in the evening, so sorry to our live audience. There were some things going on, but we are broadcasting live. It's myself, the Man in Black, Mad Matt, and Ron San. And we are here to talk about Sylvester McCoy. It's Seventh Doctor in Ghostlight.
And theme.
Awesome.
Okay, so I'm up for the summary, right?
Yep.
Okay, so Ghostlight. As short as I can make it.
Mm-hmm.
The TARDIS lands in a house. Ace comes out to investigate the house for her initiative, as the Doctor put it. She figures out it's Earth, Victorian era. Doctor comes out, and Ace thinks that it's safe to be there. She couldn't be more wrong. The house is called Gabriel Chase, and it's inhabited by the most odd people you've ever seen. They only come out at night. The staff walks around like they're hypnotized. There is a radioactive snuff box on the floor and a guy that thinks he's in the African continent that seems to have collected it. The Doctor is a little unsure of what's going on. Also in the house at the moment is a reverend there to dispute the owner of the house, Josiah Smith's claims of blasphemy, namely said, the theory of evolution. They talk, but are distracted by a commotion upstairs, which is Redvis Van Cooper trying to kill the Doctor. Redvis Van Cooper is the insane guy thinks he's in the African continent. He's tied up and put in the back, and it seems to be that this is a normal state. The proprietress of the mistress of the house, Miss Pritchard, says that he's in a distracted state and must remain confined. The Doctor's then invited down to join the Reverend at mealtime. The Doctor comes down. He's mistaken for the Reverend, and the two have a little bandied words. The Doctor, being the Doctor, completely befuddles the Reverend for a while, until a scream comes from upstairs. Apparently, Van Cooper's been exposed to the snuff box, which has begun glowing. This is important later. Also in the house is the butler, who seems to be, or actually is, a Neanderthal. Ace hears that the place is Gabriel Chase, and this makes the location Perivale, the place Ace grew up. She's not happy about this because she had sworn never to return to this city. She runs from the Doctor and finds an elevator leading downstairs. The elevator leads to the weirdest basement you've ever seen. Glowing pod thing at one end of the room, a bunch of crystalline things, and something strange locked up in a side door. Also in there, as Ace discovers momentarily, is a bunch of weird half-formed creatures. These are husks shed by the proprietor, Josiah Smith, and as he seems to be moving up the evolutionary ladder from creature to human. Ace gets in a squabble with the Neanderthal, and in the process breaks the pod thing at the end, which begins leaking forth steam. Josiah Smith and the Doctor goes down into the spaceship, and at basically gunpoint, the Doctor manages to stun Smith and apparently shut the pod down. He actually has not, and Smith gimps his way back upstairs, badly wounded, and takes his family to rest for the day. Ace is pretty knackered out by this point and falls asleep. During the Also, during this point, the Doctor has discovered that the younger daughter, Gwendolyn, who's also there, likes to collect specimens from Java, being people. One of which is a police inspector, which the Doctor wakes, and he begins to inspect the premises. The Doctor also, in the process, fixes the elevator, which Josiah broke trying to get back up. The creature that was down there, called Control, the Doctor basically makes a deal with. Its freeness in return for it inviting up the creature that was in the pod. Smith, upon hearing this, is livid. He tries to stop the creature from coming up, but fails. The creature itself looks to be almost an angelic-like being called Light, a god that the Neanderthals worshipped him as a god. He, however, is an alien who was here to do a survey of the planet Earth, and was not very happy that by the time he finished, centuries after he started, everything had changed because, of course, our planet evolves. Light is upset for being wakened in this form and found everything has changed again. He kills a couple of people, tries to figure out where or what's happened to them. Meanwhile, the Doctor begins basically a rapid-fire series of events. It discovers Josiah Smith was planning on assassinating Queen Victoria and taking her place as ruler of the British Empire. And he was using Redvis Van Cooper as a method to do that, making his insanity twisted so that he wouldn't realize what he was doing. Control has run away from all this and is essentially adopted by Van Cooper and basically retaught to be a proper lady. The entire thing culminates in a dinner in which Light begins a process of firestorm to eradicate all life on the planet Earth. Pritchard and Gwendolyn turn out to be mother and daughter, and the Doctor reminds them of this, but when Light sees they've changed, he turns them to stone. The Doctor then manages to trick Light into basically freezing himself, and instead of going to kill the Queen, Van Cooper, Control, and the butler, Nimrod, all take off into space. The Doctor confronts Ace about the fact that she had burned down the building in 100 years' time, and Ace says she wishes she blew it up instead. End of episode.
Ta-da.
Hey, I'm improvising here.
No, that was
You
decently
did manage to keep it short.
I was trying to keep it short.
That was
It's very hard
surprisingly
because
short.
there's so much that goes on in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
and you pretty much condensed it down to its barest minimums there, really.
Yeah, it's
At least in any way going semi-linearly, it could not have been more condensed.
yeah. And this is also the penultimate episode of the original run of Doctor Who. I think.
No, it was the production. It was last. Airing, it was third to last.
Third to last? Are you sure?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not the last.
It was Ghostlight, Fenric, Survival.
Huh. Because this and Survival were the last two we received in America.
Oh, they might have switched them then. I don't know. But this was definitely. I mean, it was definitely produced last, and it was aired in Britain before Fenric.
I didn't think it was.
I thought this was kind of
No, you're right. It was. It was aired 4 to 18.
So yeah, the airing in the United States for this episode was wrong. Ta-da!
And the United States didn't get Doctor Who properly until about 3 years ago.
Just
Well, now
about.
this was the classic run on PBS. We got these in 1991.
Right, which was
And
years
Ghostlight and
later.
Survival were the last block we received. I remember watching these eagerly. As all Doctor Who we got at the time, the new episodes were aired as part of a pledge break.
I gotta ask, how old were you then?
1991.
Not to put you on the spot. You can lie if you want, but
You were in your early teens for
I
sure.
was 15.
Yeah.
okay. So I was just thinking, like, if you were particularly young watching Fenric and Ghostlight, I mean, even at 15, must have been a little hard to wrap around.
Actually, I had no problems.
Ah,
You have to
It was
remember,
hectic, but it was not impossible to wrap my head
I read
around
The
it.
Lord of the Rings when I was in elementary school,
How would have
and
been
I
if I had a
understood The
copy?
Lord of the Rings when I was in elementary school.
actually, I think I read Lord of the Rings at about 11 myself.
I didn't get the Silmarillion read until I was college age because it was just too dry.
I haven't gotten it because I can only ever find it for full price, and actually no, I can only ever find it in box sets with the whole trilogy, and I already have the goddamn trilogy.
Yeah, we've got enough used
so.
bookstores in this town that I've seen a dozen copies of it used.
Oh look, Blake's 7. Or yeah, Blake.
But anyway, so this particular episode is one of the things that reminds me of the end of Doctor Who. It's obvious by this point that they did not know that they were actually going to be not having a further series, though I think the end of Survival got rewritten slightly when they realized
They
they
added the last scene in afterward. Although I'm not sure when that scene was filmed because it might have still been filmed before Ghostlight. Let me see. Now I gotta look up Survival.
You mentioned Lord of the Rings. Well, here's a picture of Return of the King cover.
Shoot, that book has had so many reprints.
No, it's Return of the King, the DVD cover from the Frank Bass version. Anywho, still scrolling.
Well, yeah, it's and this is also, of course, the point of Doctor Who, where you're getting 3 half-hour episodes as opposed to the standard 4, and only a couple of episodes actually got the full 4-episode treatment. Ghostlight wasn't one of them, and in many ways it could have used a 4th episode.
It probably could have, yeah.
Just to slow down the pace slightly.
Right.
Ever so slightly, yes.
Because it is a very rapid-fire episode.
Like, I mean, I don't know if slowing down the pace. I mean, part of what makes this episode and the following one what they are is the pace, but at the same time, about some exposition in the midst of the action they would have had more time if they had an extra 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
10 minutes of light expositing while doing things, maybe doing his experiments. 10 minutes of exposition about Smith.
Mm-hmm. And there's something interesting about this episode, and is the fact that while you see guns a lot, I think one is only ever fired once, and it's a blank. I mean, you've got Redvis Van Cooper wielding an elephant gun at one point, but the gun never goes off.
Mm-hmm.
You've got people that hold pistols all the time, but they never go off either. The Doctor holds up Josiah Smith using a radiation detector to only make him think he has a gun. But the only time we've ever seen a gun go off, I think, was when Josiah Smith wakes the Reverend up from his ether-inspired nap. So it's another attempt by them to try to be as non-violent as possible in light of the complaints back in '85 about the show being ultra-violence.
And of course, when you have a fantasy villain who needs to kill people in a non-violent way, what do? Turn them to stone.
Or, well, he killed a bunch of people, but it was, like finger lightning stuff.
Yeah.
It was, Sith power activate.
I think the most focused ones were turned to stone.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, there is the time where he kills the police constable, and you actually see the guy's eyes roll up.
Oh, and also he did kill the maid, and was holding onto a limb.
Yeah, was holding onto her severed limb.
When we're mentioning survival, I'm actually not seeing any date as to when the last scene was filmed. Although just based on the images of it, I think it wasn't. I think it was not on the set. I think it was on location, which would still leave Ghostlight as the last filmed in the set.
No, then they probably just tacked that scene on before
Yeah, that's
release.
that's what they basically did.
Yeah, the Ghostlight was the final production of the series' 26-year run. So this is the actual last episode ever made. And the last recorded sequence was that final scene with Mrs. Pritchard and Gwendolyn where they turned to stone.
Hmm.
And this is actually part of what they refer to as the Ace trilogy, which was a 3-story arc that was basically really fleshing out Ace. This was the first part of it, and then it would continue in Curse of Fenric, and then you would get more in Survival.
I need to
And
rewatch Survival.
of course, they were still bandying about ideas on season 27. Forget the crap about the Cartmel master plan because that was in the head of Cartmel. But they had talked about the idea of sending Ace to Gallifrey to become a Time Lord. They had, talked about adding a new companion. They had talked about all this stuff, but only briefly when they, got the axe.
By the way, has any of you watched Lungbarrow, the script turned movie that this was supposedly based on?
I
I
read
mean,
the
not
original.
movie. Sorry, book. I said movie. I meant book.
I read the original book, and no, Lungbarrow was not. This was not based on Lungbarrow. Lungbarrow was written by the same person that wrote this episode.
From what I'm
And
seeing in the TARDIS data core is that they wrote the Lungbarrow script. It was turned down by, I think it was by JNT, and then he turned around and wrote this. It basically changed it to become this. But I don't know.
not that I ever saw.
I believe Nash mentioned that too, actually. So more than one person has referenced it, I believe, in my presence. This particular story was supposed to be something completely different.
Because Lungbarrow was actually was
Supposed to be
something
about the
that
Doctor's past instead of Aces. Right?
yeah, it was going to be about the Doctor's past instead of Ace's, and it was something that the author of Lungbarrow had planned on. That Mark Platt was the one that wrote it. That was going to submit for season 27. He was, as far as I know, Lungbarrow was never submitted. It was something that he was writing up during season 26 and was planning to submit for 27. And then they heard there was not going to be a 27, so he turned it into a version novel. I never heard that it actually got submitted.
I wish there were sources here like there would be on Wikipedia to follow, because from all I'm seeing here is that it was revealed that John Nathan Turner turned it down for revealing too much of the Doctor's origins, and then it was reworked to become Ghostlight.
Okay, no,
There's
okay,
no proof
okay.
of that.
The Lungbarrow that I've read and the Lungbarrow that started as a script apparently are two different versions. And then parts of Lungbarrow became Ghostlight, such as a sinister housekeeper, trapped investigating policeman, and the finale based around the family dinner.
So basically, he took half the idea, kept them for the episode, and then the other half of the ideas ended up making the book.
Yes. And yeah, it looks like John Nathan Turner rejected it on the grounds that it revealed too much about the Doctor and the Time Lords too quickly. And then, of course, it turned out they were out of time.
So it wouldn't have mattered either way too much, actually.
I'm personally fine with Lung Barrow, the original version or the book version of Lung Barrow, not actually being made into an episode because there was too much weirdness in it. I mean, that's where the whole thought of genetic looms came from, was Lung Barrow.
Yeah, there's extra level of crazy for that particular run.
Yeah, I think Platt was, really smoking something.
Gee, I can't imagine where you would think that looking at this episode. Because this episode is perfectly sane and
the thing
simple.
is, though, that this episode all revolves around a central theme, and that is evolution. If you think about it, everything about this episode is evolution. Every story arc,
except for the parts that are about Ace versus Ace's past, which is
that's kind of evolution too. Although it's evolution of a different kind.
It's evolution by rejecting your past rather than growing from it. Although,
it's part
even
of
then.
Ace's.
Yeah, even then, it's helping Ace grow in the present. So.
Exactly.
Yes.
But that kind of keys into. I was mentioning this a little bit in the Skype thing before. The scene where they talk about Ace and the clothing or whatever. I kind of like how it kind of ties into simply how the setting, Gabriel Chase and everything, and Ace reject each other.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're just, appalled at her clothing and she's refusing to lie down and accept it. And it's an interesting comparison when, I don't think it was Russell T. Davies, I think it was another writer, but went on to reuse a version of that scene for Tooth and Claw.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in that version, Rose is just like, oh yeah, I'm naked, what the fuck, I don't care. And that kind of plays into...
And they're both Victorian age episodes.
Yeah, they are both Victorian.
Actually has Queen Victoria in it.
They both have references to Queen Victoria in them.
Yes, although she's never seen in this episode.
Right.
Excellent picture.
That episode was actually written by Russell T.
Okay.
Oh, it was Russell T. Okay.
So, whereas in this one, that scene works toward how where the companion and the setting are kind of at odds with one another. In the later one, it kind of shows how apathetic Rose has become toward following the rules of being in a certain setting.
Mm-hmm. And that probably,
of course, ties into the ending and creation of Torchwood and everything else.
And probably that whole bit in there was also a nod to this particular episode.
Possibly, yes.
And yeah,
one thing about Russell T is
being who he is, it definitely was. If it was written by another writer, I'd say maybe. If it's written by Russell, definitely.
Yeah, he was such a Doctor Who geek. He probably could
especially
the episodes forwards and backwards.
Yeah, especially during this era when he was trying to have an episode made of his. And who knows, if the show had run another 2 years or so, he might have gotten a script.
Actually, we should have known that episode was a Russell T. Davies episode because the entire thing was a vehicle for Torchwood.
Right.
Oh,
and actually, when I rewatched it, I found that it wasn't quite as jarring at the end as it was the original time I watched it. However, I still think it could have been the monologue could have been tweaked a little bit just to make it sound a little more natural. But that's not the episode we're talking about, so I don't want to go into too many.
Now, it's very interesting that Platt is absolutely insane in this. And this is the same person that went on to write the audio drama Spare Parts, considered to be one of the best Cybermen stories. And Spare Parts, of course, was part of the inspiration for Rise of the Cybermen, Age of Steel, for which Platt actually did receive screen credit and a fee.
Right, I heard about that.
Awesomeness.
So, that's kind of interesting.
Oh, I mean, I haven't listened to Spare Parts, but I feel like it owes a lot to Genesis of the Daleks as well. Rise of Cybermen.
It was Spare Parts. The original plan of Spare Parts was the genesis of the Daleks for the Mondasian Cybermen.
The motivation of the villain and everything in Rise of the Cybermen.
Well, that was actually taken from Genesis of the Daleks.
Right.
The original spare parts is the Fifth Doctor showing up on Mondas during the time that the Cybermen were just being issued out. But there you don't get an insane creator. At that point, the Cybermen were already there, but were not the Cybermen that we knew at that point. They were basically, I think, supposed to be a police force. And the people of Mondas were slowly cyber-converting themselves because, they've been out in space, exposed to radiation. They were having difficulties breathing, difficulties, maintaining certain things. So eventually, they, hand the police force of the Cybermen eventually stage a coup and force convert the entire population. That's spare parts in a nutshell. But it was like when they did that, they took that and they took Genesis of the Daleks and combined them into one 2-part episode, and that's where we got Rise of the Cybermen: Age of Steel.
Mm-hmm.
Platt's
As well as elements of other Cybermen stories.
Platt's spare parts was a lot more original, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, I mean, even without having heard it, I would have to agree with that, because I mean, I actually recently was reading somebody who's doing an analysis of it, and it's true. If you really look at Rise of the Cybermen and Age of Steel, it's pretty much cobbling the most effective parts of every Cyberman story together into one story. The script-wise, whether or not it actually came off that way is open to debate, but that was the intention.
It was part that and part Dalek stories. I mean, there was a human resistance, and we really hadn't seen that since, I think, the Third Doctor, Day of the Daleks. So, it was a hybrid of various Doctor Who memes, right, if you think about it. Various tropes, if you will.
Like in the article I mentioned, it was speculated that I forget if it was probably either Ricky or Jackie's death, but basically in terms of tying into Earthshock with the emotional effectiveness of that story and everything.
I don't think so. It wasn't as shocking. The whole concept of the alternate universe is very Inferno, though.
Mm-hmm. That's very true, yeah.
But we're talking about Ghostlight.
Yeah. So I don't want to go into too many details about everything else.
Because eventually we'll cover these, probably.
Right.
As fast-paced as it is, it's really... I don't think that, as you mentioned, it would be really a different show if it was any slower. Because part of this is the Doctor with literally too much to handle. He set this up as a initiative test for Ace, and to try to uncover this portion in her past. Oh, and by the way, this was originally intended to air after Curse of Fenric. I'm fairly certain.
It was actually intended that way, or
because Ace mentions Gabriel Chase in Curse of Fenric,
she does,
and that's where the Doctor was supposed to understand where
she came from.
Where she
came
from.
I have seen the debate over whether this season makes more sense in production order or in transmission order.
Actually, this season makes a lot more sense in its own order of Battlefield, Curse of Fenric, Ghostlight, and then survival,
So
which is
that's a
either
completely
air or
different
production
order.
order.
Yeah.
That's my order.
I mean, I do like
That was actually the order it was fed to us in America. So hey,
okay, and I do kind of like the idea, like when Curse Fender talked about how she experienced it and then she came back and dealt with it, and you can kind of read that as either a reference to Ghostlight if Ghostlight has already happened, or otherwise as the inspiration for Ghostlight. That scene is actually comes out in such just a perfect way that whichever order you watch them in, it works with it.
but and then but also the thing about this episode is you have the Doctor who, at this point, he's gone through the clown phase and he's now the master manipulator. And here he's bitten off more than he can chew. He's, everything's going too quickly for even him to deal with. And it's just actually good, in my opinion, to see the Doctor kind of flummoxed like this.
Right, and you see that a lot with the other Doctors, but this particular Doctor, I mean, you see it a little bit toward the end of Curse of Fenric when he didn't expect Fenric to figure out his puzzle, but it's very, very few and far between, whereas the other Doctors, it's just a part and parcel of everyday life, and they're used to dealing with it, whereas here, he gets in over his head. It's like, goddamn, things are tough.
Okay. I actually looked up Curse of Fenric. Ace mentions an old house in Perivale. This was originally intended as a foreshadowing of Ghostlight. However, the broadcast order was resequenced, and it got altered into apparent reference to a past story. So the original intended broadcast order was Battlefield Ghostlight, or Battlefield Curse of Fenric, Ghostlight, Survival, which is my order and the order I would recommend watching this season.
Does it say why they were resequenced? Because I have an idea.
Probably there was a problem in post.
I was going to say, I bet you Light took longer in post than they expected.
Actually, no, Ghostlight came out before this. So it was probably...
Oh, yeah, you're right. Never mind. Yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, Ghostlight would seem to take the longest in post, but then again, this probably had the least in terms of offset shooting, in terms of on location stuff, because the others were outdoors a lot. That might have something to do with it. It might not.
Well, also the fact that the rest of the episode, other than Light, needed virtually no special effects. You needed the displays, and that was it. Oh, and the little
displays, and there's
like
Light
stuff
doing effects.
I mean, there was the makeup of the guy being transformed. There was.
Let's make
that's easy on set. Makeup has to be done during production. It's not done in post.
Yeah, like there were some practical effects in the scene where the way it's shot, I'm not even sure if Ace was supposed to be imagining it or if it was actually happening, where all of the stuffed animals came to life or whatever.
But really, that was just sound effects, her freaking out, and then they had a ambulance siren or fire engine siren that
basically just moving figures from place to place, because you don't physically see them move. You just see them here now, then not there, then somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's production, not post-production.
Right.
Yeah, so again, that's easy on set stuff. What we're talking about that would take it longer is if there was more effects that need to actually be done after they're done shooting.
To be done after the issue. So the only one you really had in this was Light, and that was just doing the aura effect, which they might have actually accomplished by camera flare. I can't tell.
I don't think so.
You think the stone was practical, or
what's that?
You think the turning people to stone was practical?
That was also a post effect. Yes. They had to do the transition part, because the rest of it was they just replaced them with a probably painted styrofoam version of the actors.
Mm-hmm.
which is, standard stone
Right.
for most productions in this time. But I'm trying to think of what might have needed special effects in Curse of Fenric.
Right. Like I remember a lot of practical and makeup effects, but in terms of
I think Fenric might have needed.
post-production,
But yeah, it's something delayed Fenric.
right.
Or for some,
Either that, or they just felt that Fenric should be right before Survival, and that was the only decision.
Don't know, and we could assume all day until the cows come home, to be honest.
yeah,
We're just constantly going in a circular loop at this point.
Right.
Either way, for some reason, Fenric got pushed back.
Fenric got pushed back or Ghostlight got pushed up. And it could have just been because of a paper pusher somewhere decided, yeah, that one's 4 episodes, this one's 3, so we're going to do 4-3, 4-3.
Right.
You never know. Either way, it got changed, but the original intention of the writers was to have this one be the penultimate episode. And in my mind, it is. But yeah, watching the Doctor, basically, as things are spinning almost out of his control, it really is an analogy to me, is basically the Doctor's like a performer in a Chinese circus. The guys that spin all the little plates on sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, he's just got too many plates spinning at the same time. And he's, on the verge of losing control. And you can just see him absolutely frustrated because everything's happening too fast for him to deal with at the same time.
And apparently, at the same time, Ace is stepping up to the plate, and he doesn't even know it.
That's even interesting because I'm trying to remember. There was something that at some point the Doctor reacts to something in a way as though he knows more about it than he really should, which says he even had an idea going into this, even though he clearly didn't know everything. I'm trying to remember what that scene was. But it's basically he reacts to something as though he already knew what was there, and there really would have been no reason for him to.
I have to know which scene you're talking about.
Yeah.
That could just...
I'm trying to remember
because this Doctor's also very good at maintaining his inscrutability and letting you think he knows too much about everything.
There's that.
Even when he doesn't.
Basically, he stated something was something that he shouldn't really have known that, but I can't really remember what it was to actually...
It's like when he goes to meet the Reverend and he's mistaken for Josiah Smith. He pretty much just goes with it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Although on the exact opposite hand, you can tell he's clearly out of his depths when he's trying to figure out what exactly went on between Ace and the building later on, and they're talking at the fireplace.
Yeah, and when
I couldn't quite catch that line of what exactly Ace said, other than "Don't do that." She's like, "Don't do something. That's what I did," and I couldn't quite catch what she was saying.
Control at that point had the invite to the dinner, the royal dinner, and she threatens to burn it. And
so Ace was just saying, "Don't burn the house down." That's what because that's what I'm
don't do it. That's what I did. Because then her response to doing that won't make a difference. Then she says, "Then I'll burn whole place down." And Ace just freaks out at that point and says, "Don't do it. That's what I did." And that's the point that the Doctor...
Which is really strange, because you'd think the Doctor would know that, because he would be aware that the building isn't there in 1984 because it's been burned down.
I don't think he did his homework. If you take this season in its intended order, we're again back to the intended order, the Doctor hears Ace mention this in Curse of Fenric. And he decides to take Ace there to find out more about whatever this was that freaked her out so much. And he winds up there 100 years prior to the situation, and bammo, shit's happening. Now, it's actually kind of cruel for the doctor to try to convince Ace to do this as part of, her initiative test. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, here Ace
Definitely.
is thinking, this is all her test to become a time-space explorer like the Doctor. And here the Doctor is trying to clear up something in her past that's obviously troubled her.
I'm trying to see how exactly I worded it now that we're on that particular discussion.
Oh. But yeah, I think the one part that got me kind of, was actually when we first saw Control. I'm like, so wait, the Doctor knew about it. How did you know about Control? When did we ever actually get a chance to explain Control away until all of a sudden sometime later? Kind of baffled the heck out of me for a little bit.
No, the Doctor heard Control rasping on when he was down there. Remember, he was down there to rescue Ace with Josiah Smith, and...
Yeah, but it just sounded like psychobabble at the time, I thought.
Control actually got out at that point, and basically the Doctor was shaking her hand through the elevator as she's grasping onto his hand.
Oh, that's right.
Point Freddy's almost breaking.
All right. I found the wording I used to describe this season. After a season of traveling with the Doctor, he decided to force Ace to face some of her emotional traumas with faith that he could treat Ace's repressed memories in the same way he would treat a nail sticking out of a door frame, and she would be strong enough to make it.
Really?
Which is, of course, with a blunt hammer.
Yes. It's kind of the Jeremy Clarkson way of fixing psychological trauma.
Kind of.
Oh, don't worry, we'll have that fixed in no time at all. Now, where's my hammer?
Get better, brain! Yes, I turned that around and made a Monty Python reference.
Yes.
What of it?
I have a companion I've had trouble with me for a year now, and I'm going to cure her of all her mental issues. How hard could it be?
Thud. Well, this is kind of a nifty picture.
Which, of course, just leads me to the mental image of Richard Hammond as Josiah Smith. No. And James May as the Reverend. It's gonna hurt me for a while.
Whatever happened to... Oh, that's right. The Reverend did he get turned into a monkey?
He got turned into a chimpanzee and put in a cage, and that was the last we ever saw of him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was basically a stand-in for Light's ideology before we had Light.
Yes.
He ultimately got defeated by the evil evolutionary figure, which of course brought in the evil anti-evolution character.
Correct.
Yep.
There were no survivors in Gabriel Chase other than the Doctor and Ace, and the ones that escaped in the spacecraft. Red Viscan Cooper lived, Control lived, Nimrod lived, the Doctor lived, Ace lived.
Oh, and I think the servants that were only around during the day lived.
No. They were out of the house at the time, yes.
Yeah, they lived.
And the servants...
They were in it for at least 2 times.
Part of me is wondering why the heck the servants worked there. They were obviously freaking out. They wouldn't come near the place after dark.
Light arguably lived until 1983.
He was discorporealated.
Right.
Doesn't matter.
Right.
No, he wasn't. He was discorporealated in 1883. The house maintained a memory, a after image, if you would. You ever seen pictures of Hiroshima or Nagasaki after the atomic bomb went off?
Because I want the shadows etched into the ground.
That's all the house had. Was basically one of those after images of Light, a psychic impression pressed on the house. And that's what Ace felt in 1983.
Which would imply that Ace had enough psychic talent to be able to pick up on it. Which would be an interesting idea.
Not necessarily. I mean, why do you think the house was vacant for 100 years? Because anybody that came near it probably got the heebie-jeebies.
because Light was still technically there in some shape or
No,
form.
no, he
Not a
wasn't.
physical one, but
Light was dead at that point. He's basically, it's a psychic after image, but it was
Yeah.
strong enough that even normal people could feel it.
I wasn't saying that he was physically there to interact with them, but the memory of him was still present.
Yes.
And probably freaked out anyone who ever got inside the main stairwell there.
Not to mention, this was like the house itself was decked out like what if Stephen King was a taxidermist.
Actually, it was decked out like the Bates house, for that matter.
Only, I mean, this is like the BBC does Maniac Mansion. If you think about this, how many of you remember the game Maniac Mansion? Anybody? Anybody?
I've played it.
Bueller?
I've not gone far.
But it's the same thing. You've got, your protagonist wandering around in this huge mansion where a whole bunch of weird-ass shit's going on.
Except in this case, it's all aliens.
It was in Maniac Mansion, too.
Oh. Here we have a mad scientist and a ghost living in a house together.
Again, Maniac Mansion.
Ah.
I'm serious.
I know you're serious because I've encountered the zombies in that game.
You should download the game and play it. I believe it's out there for free these days.
Yes, and matter of fact,
actually, it'd have to be because it's now officially abandonware since LucasArts no longer exists.
Mm-hmm. And it technically there's also a fan-made improved version, which just tweaked the graphics, and that's all they messed with.
But yeah, I would recommend playing that because that was a revolutionary game at the time. There was an NES version of it, which is how I first played it.
I believe I tried playing that too, and it was only on rental, and I was completely baffled.
It's an interesting little game.
I think I was about 8 at the time.
There was a sequel too, Day of the Meteor, or Day of the Tentacle.
Day of the Tentacle, yes.
But yeah, it's the same thing. This is the British doing Maniac Mansion as Doctor Who. It's basically freaky, weird mansion with the weirdest ass stuff happening. And it's all happening so fast that even the Doctor's head is spinning. But this has always been one of my favorite episodes. Okay, maybe not always. I think I was a little ambivalent on it when I first saw it because it was just so weird. But it's grown on me considerably since then. And just because there's so many scenes.
Also, it's really weird, an episode where the Doctor wins by convincing someone that he hasn't studied enough make-believe animals. And therefore his head explodes a la Robot Talks To by Captain Kirk.
Yeah, he kirks.
And that's how he dies.
That's one of the things I like is that particular scene. He beats the bad guy by kirking him.
Which is interesting because the previous time to this that I saw the Doctor do that to an actual computer, it didn't work. At least not in the long term, which was the Green Death. He sort of manages to kirk a computer and then it bounces back and comes back at him.
Well, in this case, it goes to show how inflexible Light actually was.
Yeah, that's true. It basically is as effective as a computer there. In that type of situation.
Yep. I mean, this is a person that was sent to catalog a planet and then was upset because the planet changed while he was cataloging it. Light is not too tightly hinged either.
Yeah, and he's taking way too long to do a simple job, I would think.
Well, there are billions of species on the planet, considering he is counting all the microbial ones and everything.
But even so, he should be expecting change.
Right.
This is a snapshot at this. Send someone back in a million years, recatalog everything. Done. So, I mean, he's suffering from Nerima syndrome at this point. He is, not too tightly wrapped and is a complete idiot.
And he
He
just
really,
goes,
if he wants to live with someone and deal with constant not change, he should really be hanging out with Daleks.
Yeah. Or Cybermen. Well, even they change.
Right.
And so do the Daleks, now that you think about it. I mean,
Yeah, but the Daleks are very heavily against biological change.
well, it really depends. I mean,
When
the original Daleks, yes, and then you had the Davros hybrids where,
Davros does not mind evolution. Daleks hate it. That's the difference. When Davros is in control,
the Daleks are more like racial purity.
Yeah, when Davros
genetic
is in
purity.
Right. When Davros is in control, mutations can be used to improve the race. When Daleks are in control, mutations are abominations, period.
And must be exterminated. But,
Right.
Daleks will exterminate their own grandmother. Rather than feeding it to the ravenous bug bladder beast of Trow.
If Dalek Superman was born, rather than worshipping him, the Daleks would all try to exterminate him.
Now I'm mentally imagining a Dalek with a cape with an S on the back. And an
I am
eye
here to protect the planet.
And for some reason, a little forelock drawn on right above the eye stalk. I am Dal L. Dal Ek.
I forgot how shitty Google links are.
Dal Ek of Krypton, yes.
This what you're thinking of?
Nah, mine was weirder. Especially since I was thinking about it with the Davies era Daleks, or even better yet, take the Daleks from the Matt Smith era and use the blue Dalek as a base. Damn Sentai Daleks. Anyway.
I like the green one.
We fight for truth, justice, and the American way.
Nope. He exterminates for truth, justice.
And the Dalek way.
But let's see.
And that was just about to bring me back to Dalek Zod, which would brought me to an inside joke between me and Randy.
You'll be for Daleks. Yeah, it is. It's actually for people that might not be knowing. I write fan fiction in my spare time, and I let Bill look through it to do a little base editing for me because everybody needs to have someone else look at their work when they're editing, or self-editing is bad, yo. Self-editing is bad, okay?
Good.
Okay.
And Bill, one scene I had was a Dalek commanding someone to kneel. And, yeah, he put the comment there going, Dalek Zod?
This just happened to be the weekend that we both watched Man of Steel.
Yes, it was.
I want to see Pacific Rim next weekend.
Yeah, that's on my list, too. I want to go see it in IMAX.
Most definitely.
3D. But I'll see about that. On a side note, I actually just went to go see Despicable Me 2.
Speaking of which, the Doctor has fought giant robots. Has he fought giant monsters if you do not count dinosaurs?
Giant... has he fought kaiju-grade monsters? Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think so.
He has, but it's been a while. I don't think we've seen a kaiju-grade monster since the Third Doctor era.
Fourth Doctor.
Fourth Doctor? What are you thinking for Fourth Doctor?
Gosh, they're bringing
the
back
giant robot from Robot doesn't count.
No.
Well, in terms of in terms of giant robots,
the
we got
alien
one in
race
the
is
next
coming
doc.
back for the special in November. I can't think of them
The
now.
Zygons? No,
Zygons?
the Zygons don't count. They were man-sized, and the Loch Ness monster is filed under dinosaur.
Ugh.
Right.
What?
And as Bill said, dinosaurs didn't count
That's not a
because
dinosaur.
the Loch Ness it is. It's an ichthyosaur.
Ugh.
Oh,
Bullets.
what's it called? God damn! I just the hell was the episode I just watched with the third Doctor
The Green
fighting
Death.
against the giant? No, it's the other. It's the other. It's another one on Netflix with Joe. So
Carnival of Monsters.
There we go. Carnival of Monsters.
The Drashings.
Yeah.
Those count.
Those count, yeah.
Fighting.
Although the Cyber King would kick its ass.
The Cyber King. I don't know about that actually. Drashings could go through solid steel like a knife through butter.
True.
But can they take a shot from a Dreadnought class laser blast?
Which might just make it mad. And the Drashings always had a habit of popping up from the bottom so the actual Cyber King could step there and not know it until it was too late. It's hard to do a Dreadnought class laser blast to your own foot. So that would be interesting.
There we go. We've officially Doctor Who-ified Pacific Rim.
Kind of, actually. Although I do kind of think of Pacific Rim as the closest we'll ever get to a live-action Evangelion movie. Come on, you've got two pilots in a giant mecha working in tandem fighting a giant monster.
Although Lucas that we had on here during the season 7A review, or a couple of them I think, reviews, he was mentioning that he thinks Pacific Rim was originally intended to be a Montauk movie from the miniatures game, and then it ended up becoming an independent property during production.
We'll see. I mean, we'll have to see how it looks when it's done, because all we've seen is trailers thus far.
Right. I mean, I think we've seen a couple of the monsters and a couple of the robots in the trailers.
Mm-hmm.
But they've mostly been upper shots or really shadowy.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the entire thing as in detail.
I want to see a long shot of it marching through the city, dang it.
But, yeah, Ghostlight. We were talking about Ghostlight.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about trying to bring it back.
Let's see. We've talked about how rapid it is. We've talked about... we actually did mention that, yes, this was actually the first time we'd been into a Victorian setting, I think.
I think it might have been. I think other than the Davies era, this might be the only Victorian setting he had, not counting novels and audio.
No, the second Doctor, one of the Dalek episodes had a Victorian setting. And
Evil, right?
And didn't one of the predecessors to...
That's right, because this is supposed to borrow elements from Evil of the Daleks, I think.
Didn't one of the predecessors to the Great Intelligence actually take place in Victorian times? I don't know. That particular season of Second Doctor is not one of the ones I've paid a lot of attention to.
Because a lot of it's kind of missing.
Yeah, it's largely missing.
And technically, you also have the gunfighters, which took place in the Victorian era, but in America, right. So it wasn't the West. Yeah, exhale.
Yeah, generally Westerns aren't largely considered Victorian, but it's true enough they are Victorian era.
Well, considering the fact it was done by the British, yeah,
not exactly people to be doing Westerns,
Yeah, well, you wouldn't think that about the Italians either, and they did plenty of them.
True.
Well, apparently they had really good places to do it. They understood the West a little better.
There's been a few, but I think that is the last time we had seen, or the first time we'd seen a Victorian episode since, like I said, I think somewhere in the second Doctor.
Yeah, Second Doctor.
Because Victoria, an early companion of the second Doctor, was from, and eventually stayed in the not too distant future.
Which reminds me, I actually I have the article open here. Yeah, and they at one point Sarah Jane Smith jokes that Victoria the Companion was actually Queen Victoria.
Which is not true, but yeah.
Right.
But so this period has been largely not done by Doctor Who. I mean, the Fifth Doctor had an Edwardian episode.
I mean, it's probably been done as much as.
Oh wait, no, I am wrong.
I
am wrong. I will say I'm wrong because the Fourth Doctor had Talons of Wang Chiang.
Oh yeah.
So
were any of the people on the production team for the first Doctor alive when this episode takes place? It would have had to been up there. I don't think Hartnell was quite. I don't think Hartnell was quite old enough. So maybe not. Maybe nobody was. If anybody was alive when Ghostlight takes place, like anybody involved in Doctor Who.
No, I don't think so.
Born at the time.
No, because this is taking place in 1883,
right.
Which is 80 years before.
Yeah.
The first episode of Doctor Who.
Yeah, no.
I think Hartnell was actually in his 50s, wasn't he?
Yeah. So if somebody had been born when this was supposedly had taken place, they would be 80 when Doctor Who first aired.
So there's possible that some audience members might have been alive in the Victorian era when Doctor Who started, but not.
But it's doubtful. It's doubtful that, first of all, if they're that old, they probably haven't been watching Doctor Who.
True.
Because they would have been too old to enjoy it, unless of course they were there with their great grandson.
That's
or something.
true. Yeah, that's true. 80 years old 50 years ago wasn't what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, you have 80-year-old people who demand having their television so they have something to do during the day. It wasn't that way in 1960.
No. It wasn't.
You want our Matlock privileges back?
They might have been listening to the radio all day long.
Right. They would have been listening to the radio, reading books, something along those lines.
Imagine that. Sorry, I was thinking my job involves cable, and sometimes people astound me, but I shouldn't go into too many details with that, so I'll shut up.
Yeah, we've gone on enough tangents tonight.
Well, that too.
I mean, it's been a constant tangent night again.
It hasn't really. We're talking about Victorian era.
Yeah, we're talking about the fact. Yeah, this is the first time.
Randy, since you are the main fan of the episode, do you want to go into any more details about what it is that really appeals to you about it?
Well, like I said, you've got the Doctor's flummoxed. You still see him trying to be the mastermind, but obviously losing it. You've got the ongoing evolution theme, which I mentioned. You've got, the entire haunted house feeling of the episode. Like I said, it's decked out like, Stephen King was a taxidermist.
The more you say the Dr. Flummox, I'm kind of now seeing this as the Seventh Doctor in a Fourth Doctor adventure.
Not really. Not really.
We both said not really.
It's just the fact that, as I've said, he is usually... I mean, we watched him be this awesome manipulator in Remembrance of the Daleks, where he basically has engineered the entire thing and apparently had since the Hartnell days. Mm-hmm. he had left this as a deliberate plan to get to the Daleks, which...
You can't really say that because he didn't know about the Daleks in the Hartnell days.
Did he or didn't he? Because he deliberately left the Hand of Omega on Earth buried there.
But he got to it before Davros did. So I'd say that would be when he reprogrammed it.
But why did he leave it there in the first place?
To hide it from the Time Lords.
Is that why he did it?
Or is that what he wants?
Yeah, it's one of these things that it's basically the end game of this colossal chess game.
Again, I would quote Dune: plans within plans.
Within plans, yeah. And this is kind of how the Seventh Doctor worked, is the fact that he had this whole plans within plans within plans.
Which is why episodes like, well, I'm trying to think of what was the Paradise? No, not Paradise Towers. There was the Happiness Patrol, and what else in between Remembrance and Great and Secret, or Greatest Show in the Universe?
Silver Nemesis, you know.
Silver. Oh, that's right. Silver. And really, I can't even remember whether the Doctor was manipulating anything in that episode. It was just such a
crap episode.
Yeah, like I remember reading at some point that during that episode he pauses to play chess with Fenric in order to set up Curse of Fenric. And I can't even remember anything like that from the episode, but I really don't have any urge to go back and rewatch it, so I don't know.
See, I haven't watched any of that yet.
But especially the Happiness Patrol feels kind of out of place after what the Doctor is in Remembrance of the Daleks, knowing what
the
he's going to be in the
Patrol
following
is kind
season.
of a flashback.
It really feels out of place.
Yeah, it looks like it should have been an episode from the previous season.
Right.
Silver Nemesis is trying...
If it had happened directly after Dragonfire, which couldn't because Dragonfire ended the season, but if it had been in between there, it would have made sense.
Actually, if you could have gone from Dragonfire to the Happiness Patrol to Greatest Show in the Galaxy to Remembrance of the Daleks, I'm not even going to try to grate Silver Nemesis in there. If you go in that order, you actually almost see the gradual move from comic to mastermind.
I'm wondering if that's how it was written, ignoring. I mean, actually, well, Remembrance of the Daleks wasn't. Supposedly, Silver Nemesis was the one that was actually the
anniversary special.
The anniversary. I imagine Remembrance was written that way, but then they wanted a strong season opener for the sake of ratings and moved it.
Probably something like that. But no. Silver Nemesis was always intended to be the 25th anniversary special.
Oh.
And there are many reasons why Silver Nemesis was crap. Yeah. If you go onto YouTube, you can do a search for the behind the scenes for the 25th anniversary special, which was the making of Silver Nemesis. You can look for Doctor Who making of Silver Nemesis, and you will find out that
maybe our YouTube technician can build in a link in the video.
But you'll find out things like the fact that the normal, week-long production schedule for Doctor Who had been pushed to 3 days. So the entire episode had
for the entire season, or just that episode?
For that episode.
That's the way you make a fondly remembered special.
They kind of had to. You see, part of the problem was that at that time, the BBC Studios was in the middle of it as asbestos scare. So the studios were at a space premium because they were, cleaning out parts of the studios, cleaning asbestos out of some of them. And to be honest, considering the amount of Doctor Who alumni who have died of cancer of various kinds within the last few years, this is probably a good thing that they got to it. I mean, look at Elizabeth Sladen died of cancer. Nicholas Courtney, died of cancer. Um, Janet Fielding, who played Tegan, is dying of cancer.
So we're going to say the doctor is Dr. Manhattan now?
No.
I lynch you now, Bill.
I'm saying asbestos is a known carcinogen.
Right.
So I'm just thinking that, that probably the fact that there was an asbestos scare might have been, that they realized that this stuff might be seeping into, stuff.
Especially where BBC was filming.
Yeah.
So
But
they want to get it done
regardless
as ASAP.
For Silver Nemesis, they were cramped for space and they were cramped for time. So their shooting schedule got advanced. So the actors had very little time to prepare and very little time to get used to the script. Like I said, go out there and watch Doctor Who, Making of Silver Nemesis.
Still think, they could have taken one of the enemies out of the script and it would have still been an improvement.
Well, they wanted all the silver stuff in there, and they wanted the Cybermen in there because the Cybermen are silver, and
the arrow thing was silver.
Silver!
But regardless, this was a season ago, and now we're dealing with Ghostlight because we tangented.
Right.
Because your
Now we're talking about
tangents
the
never end.
But
So Matt, what do you want to talk about for Ghostlight?
What do I want to talk about with Ghostlight?
uh-huh.
To be honest, I feel kind of indifferent about it.
Yeah. Like the thing about Ghostlight is one of the main, I don't know if you say talking points, but the main thoughtful thing about the episode, the interplay between evolution and resistance to it, I kind of feel it's something that's there. We acknowledge it, and it's something that we can definitely say, is a steady theme in sci-fi things and in life, and both sides will always be there. But beyond that, it just doesn't seem to be something that really fits a podcast like this. I don't know.
No, I don't know. I think the fact that how it was written in the episode was very well done.
It was well
there
done.
is
Yeah.
there's 100 different plot lines going on.
Right.
And all of them can be boiled down to evolution. Every single one of them. Either evolution as a species or evolution as a person.
It can even go beyond that. It can boil down to forced evolution or resistance to evolution.
Yeah. And the fact that...
Even from the Doctor intentionally, starting off the episode by forcing Ace to deal with her past and move on. To the our two aliens. One is completely opposed to evolution. One is forcing it on himself and others.
So really, the entire story and the fact that he manages to do this through so many plots and subplots, and it takes a while to sink in. The episode really does. You actually have to let it digest. And once you realize this, you realize how well structured it is.
I think the reason why I feel kind of indifferent about it is that it did move too fast. I mean, I get all the things that they were doing in this episode, but it just felt like done.
The family that owned the that includes Control and what's her was it Control? No, not Control. Control's not a member of the family, right?
No.
No, okay. So that's where my confusion was for a second, because I was going to say, I'm like, if she's a member of the family, then she can't have been with him all that long. But never mind. She's not the one that's the daughter. That's the other one.
No, Gwendolyn was the daughter.
Right.
Okay, so basically, originally the house was owned by the Pritchard family, an upstanding British noble family. You had George Pritchard.
That was after Light brought the specimens in and stored them there, right?
Millions of years. Basically, what you can attain with this is that millions of years ago, Light landed on Earth to do this survey. He had originally, surveyed everything. Everything changed. And he exhausted himself in this and went to take his nap, and his servants simply never bothered to rouse him. Time passes. Ship is buried. Paraveil is built over the place where the ship landed. Gabriel Chase is built on top of the ship itself. Gabriel Chase is owned by the Pritchard family, George, his wife, and their daughter Gwendolyn. Now, with Light are two beings, Control and Survey. Control, and they represent standard experimental procedure. You've got your control group and your survey group. Survey escapes, names himself Josiah Smith, kills George Pritchard, and assumes control of Gabriel Chase. This is
and also frees Nimrod in the process.
Yes, although I really do wondering what their name of the character Nimrod, if they were trying to hint at something.
Like he's thick.
Anyway, he takes control of Gabriel Chase, probably somewhere around 1880. After weird stuff happens, they send...
1880 was the year that the policeman was...
1881 was the year that the policeman... Somewhere in there. I thought it was 2 years, but somewhere in there. Shortly after this happens, the policeman's dispatched to investigate the disappearance of George Pritchard, and he gets, quote, sent to Java, unquote. Somewhere along the lines, Marcus Red Cooper comes to visit his old pal George Pritchard, is captured, taken to the basement, driven insane with a portion of Light, and Josiah Smith hatches this plan to kill the Queen and take over Victorian England, take over the British Empire. Time passes as he works on this, and then the Doctor and Ace shows up. Meanwhile, probably to kill time with his own amusement, he's been pushing out theories on evolution enough to enrage the local reverend, who comes for a visit.
Mm-hmm.
Also, during this point, he's been evolving himself up to modern human. This makes sense thus far?
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I get it, but I think you're kind of trying to help Bill get through this.
The Doctor, of course, being the Doctor, shows up just as everything boils to a head. And, everything kind of starts happening at once, and the Doctor is forced to try to deal with everything at the same time.
In addition to the new elements that he introduced to the cauldron.
Mm-hmm.
Namely Ace and everything that comes with that.
Yeah, this was not originally his master plan, but he kind of stepped into the middle of it and starts, stirring the pot. And then it promptly starts to boil over on him. But he manages to stagger through it okay, and everybody comes out a winner because it's Doctor Who in the 80s. And he's the Doctor, that's what he does. Yes, the episode does happen staggeringly fast. But it also, I think, the cinematography in this episode is also very well done. There's one part in there where Gwendolyn starts playing a piano and singing "That's the Way to the Zoo." And as this is going on, other situations are going on, and you can still hear it playing in the background. for these episodes, and it's just kind of freaky. It's the kind of the this version of the da da da. It's like, what the hell, you know? And yeah, they also make allusions to it being bedlam for a moment when they're trying to figure out where it is. Is this a madhouse with the patients in charge? And it kind of is.
Actually, it almost literally is. One of the guys, he escapes while he's being studied and experimented on.
Mm-hmm.
And then takes over.
Yes.
Oh, that's one of the other prisoners.
I'm not sure why they added Nimrod to this, other than, just they needed somebody that old.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know if he was, maybe he was added just to kind of force that, hey, didn't you realize we're talking about evolution, so here's a Neanderthal thing in there, or...
Here's a Neanderthal in a monkey suit. Let's watch him evolve.
Mm-hmm.
And then
with everything else going on, he does kind of seem like a last-minute addition that doesn't really have as much purpose in the plot.
And yet,
like,
at the same time, I completely love the character.
Yeah, it's like he's a good character, but like, for example, you can't say he was kept around to be the one that doesn't evolve, because that's what Control is even named for, as the control group that doesn't change.
But then, on the other side of it, you have Lady Pritchard and Gwendolyn, who are both victims. And yet every time they're talking about sending someone off to Java, they get these twisted little smiles. And just like the doctor says, I could forgive her for all this if she didn't enjoy it so much. So that's also kind of, sick and twisted.
Mm-hmm.
So you wind up with sympathy for the Neanderthal and not for the Victorian couple.
Which is an evolution in of itself.
But, again, another thing I like for this is both the scenes and the writing and the cinematography of it. Ace asks the doctor if he has things he fears, and he's like, I can't stand burnt toast.
Yeah, that reminds me, what is it with this doctor and food? First there's the unlimited rice pudding, which he throws in obviously to throw off Davros's little monologue. Here he's got the burnt toast that he brings up not once but twice. What is it with the seventh doctor? I can't even say that, because later doctors have had their own things with food.
And the sixth doctor had something with food.
Repeatedly, actually.
The vegetarian thing or something else?
Not just the vegetarian
thing, the carrot thing. Carrot juice. That's all I need to say.
Going fishing for Gumblejack, yeah.
And the fifth doctor. The fifth doctor technically started off.
Celery. The celery?
No, even before that, the third doctor had
was the celery referenced prior to Caves?
As to why he put it on? No, it was when he originally put it on as in Castrovalva, where he basically is, he's still kind of weary from the regeneration. He's gone to Castrovalva to recuperate, and they're offering him food, and he looks down and sees, celery in a bowl, and he's like, celery, definitely a sign of civilization, and promptly flips it in his lapel. And it was there ever since. He never explained why until Caves.
Right.
So part of the costume.
I mean, more like did people in the story comment on it, or was it just there? And
it was just there.
The elephant in the room.
It was just the elephant in the room. But even the food thing is even before that. I mean, you had the fourth doctor with his jelly babies.
Jelly babies.
And the third doctor in Day of the Daleks, Joe, I think it was, it was Joe, accuses him of being essentially a one-man wine and cheese society when he's staying at this house.
Well, and actually the second doctor also started with the jelly babies.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it goes all the way back to the second doctor, actually. just a little bit.
And the first doctor nearly wound up married over some cocoa.
Yes,
Oh,
he
that's
did.
right. Aztecs.
And not to mention, of course, the 10th doctor eating jam right out of a jar.
Well, when you get the 10th Doctor, you get the whole, I can't even try to pronounce it, I hate pears
Mm-hmm.
and bananas.
And then you've got the
The
11th
love of
doctor with
bananas.
his fish sticks and custard. Fish fingers.
Fish fingers
Yeah,
and
he had a
custard,
whole episode about food.
which Matt Smith actually admitted that it took him a while, but he actually got used to the taste of it, apparently.
I imagine he's probably force-fed it at conventions.
Probably a few times.
It's like
I've
there are
been half
probably
tempted to try it myself a few times.
probably fangirls that cook fish fingers and custard just so that they can shove it down Matt Smith's throat.
Oh, custard and fish fingers, thank you.
So really, the doctor's kind of had an ongoing food thing.
He's an ongoing connoisseur.
He's a foodie. You just never noticed until now that he's actually a foodie.
This particular incarnation likes rice pudding and hates burnt toast.
Yep.
But, you know,
At least we know what he likes.
But that scene itself is very deep, especially what he goes on to say about bus stations.
Oh yeah,
Bus stations?
It's horrible
Well,
places full of
that's
lost
another
luggage
one.
and lost souls.
that's another one with the inscrutability of this Doctor, because you can't tell if he's just trying to throw Ace off from the situation, or whether those are seriously his deepest thoughts.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Again, the chess master.
But there's also parts where he's being almost deliberately hammy. When he's arguing with Light, you can almost just see him start chewing scenery.
Well, yeah, that's basically he's like, oh, just a guy who doesn't like evolution. Well, what about dragons?
No, not even that part. The part where he's getting his mock angry going.
Actually, we were talking about making this longer. That's one thing. I mean, Light has what, a third of an episode to really shine as a villain,
He's only in there for part 3.
and he's only in for what, a third of part 3.
No, he's in there. The introduction of Light is almost the scene breaker.
Yeah, the introduction of Light is really the beginning of part 3, and he's pretty much gone at the latest halfway through the episode.
No, he's got 2/3 of an episode.
Yeah,
He's got
about
2/3 of an
2/3.
episode to do it in because, yeah, the finale after that is pretty quick.
Evolution.
But then again,
Evolution. I hated.
That 2/3 of the episode is including other people having their own particular scenes and such.
Mm-hmm. Don't eat the soup.
And part 3 is also the one where he references a former Doctor Who script editor,
Oh?
Douglas Adams. He references Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy when they sit down for dinner.
What does he say?
He says, who was it that said that humans don't invite their ancestors to dinner?
Did Douglas Adams actually say that first?
Well, from what I'm seeing, that's a Hitchhiker's Guide reference. It sounds like something that would have appeared in Hitchhikers, although I don't quite specifically remember it, but I only watched that once and haven't read the books. But it does vaguely...
It does vaguely ring of Douglas, but I can't be certain myself.
Yeah. Somebody check WikiQuote. Yeah, TARDIS data core says it's a reference to Hitchhiker's Guide
Yeah,
to the
that's
Galaxy.
where I got it. Oh, here we go. Hitchhiker's Guide. Humans are not proud of their ancestors and rarely invite them around to dinner.
Very nice of them.
Yes, a very understated quote.
Of course, the doctor didn't. I'm not sure if the doctor realized quite how far back the ancestry of the dated to.
Yeah.
A few more million years than most of us would have thought. That's saying something with a Neanderthal at the table.
Yeah.
Very true.
So, is that about it then?
Does anybody else have anything to say about the episode?
Not particularly. It just kind of, and it was done. It's like, oh, okay, that just happened. Can't say I hate it.
Right.
Well,
That's the thing. I
It kept
don't
my
dislike
attention the
it.
entire time.
Yeah.
I think it's one of these episodes you have to actually watch a few times to actually have it sink in.
Possibly.
Which would make sense because Fenric I had to watch 3 times before I actually liked it. So that's probably the same way with Ghostlight because they are very much the same pace, the same density, especially.
And it's also kind of indicative of the Seventh Doctor era and the fact that they,
And that's
they are
probably
still-
why
they are still writing for 4 episodes stories, and then
Right.
condensing them to 3
the thing, like-
episodes.
I look at Survival and I want to know why I feel like it's less fitting for that season, and it's just because the concepts in it are nowhere near as dense as something like Battlefield, Ghostlight, Curse of Fenric. It's just a much less dense episode, and that's why it kind of doesn't feel as strong as the rest of its season.
In fact, its Survival is almost a 5th Doctor episode.
Actually, that and it's kind of like if you took some of the concepts in Ghostlight and put them into the ideas, not script, not plot wise, but in terms of the ideologies, some of them, and put them into an episode, but nowhere near all of them. Like they could kind of work together as a 2-parter type of deal, which is another reason to go with your preference of switching Ghostlight and Fenric, because then you do have Ghostlight and Survival back to back.
Yeah, as I've said, that is my preferred order. If I was ever going to show a marathon of every Doctor Who episode ever happened, I would show them in that order. Of course, that would, involve many, many days worth of programming. Oh, dear God.
Put the
I think it'd have to be a couple months worth of programming, wouldn't it?
Just about.
put 100,000 BC, and then Ghostlight, and then Survival. Or was it 100 million BC? I can never remember.
What, the very first episode?
Yeah, well, minus the first episode. But yeah, the first serial minus the first episode.
I can't remember.
Yeah, neither can I.
100 something. That's why Tribe of Gum is just so much easier to remember.
Yeah, Tribe of Gum.
That's what I was thinking of them as.
Oh, so ratings then?
Yes, so.
There's nothing else. Ratings then? How's someone else other than me going first this time?
Well, I'm sure Randy's going to go a bit higher than this, but I'm probably going to come down on this as a 3.5 out of 5 for now. Like I said, it's good in a lot of ways, but it just doesn't strike me in the way that's something that I'd want to keep coming back to. Although, as we said, maybe watching it a couple more times might improve that opinion.
All right. Well, I actually have to go 4 to 4.5 on this. I really like this episode because
That's about what I think. By the way, for those who don't know, Randy's basically the one who picked this episode as the 7th Doctor one.
Actually, no. My The Seventh Doctor episode is Remembrance.
Well, for us to
Yeah,
go over that.
this is my pick of the season 26 episode. I have watched both this and Curse of Fenric repeatedly, and I don't like Curse of Fenric half as much as I like this episode. I think partially because I never really liked the Hemivores in Curse of Fenric. They kind of just seem to be ad hoc in there.
Yeah, I kind of see them as an incidental thing within the rest of the story as well.
Yeah, and there is no ad hoc in this. Everything is part of the story. Everything has a relevance. And so I like that kind of concise writing, even with the rapid pace of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I choose this one above Curse of Fenric. Even though I think Curse of Fenric is the more popular episode.
It is more popular. Of the three, I really come down for Battlefield, and that's just because Ghostlight sort of has fantasy elements, whereas Battlefield has ones that appeal to me.
That has the direct Arthurian illusion, and
Right.
that direct Arthurian illusion has caused a lot of fan backlash against that episode. I like that episode too, but there's a lot of people that do not like that episode because it alludes to basically the entire Arthurian legend being an extra-dimensional fight and the Doctor being Merlin in it, and it's just like, no.
See, that sounds interesting to me. But, yeah, so I guess it comes down to me for a rating. I have to agree with Bill. It's something that happened, and I think it might need extra viewings to quite grasp the entirety of the episode and every detail. But I get the basic gist of almost everything that they set out to do with this episode. So maybe I don't like it as much as Randy because I have not seen it enough to quite get it all. But it wasn't exactly bad. It kept my attention. Doesn't seem to be anyone really wasted in this episode. Didn't really piss me off on anything either, and it was shot fairly well and seemed to have a constant good idea of where they were going with it. So yeah, about 3.5.
By the way, the whole thing with Arthurian legend involving the Doctor and everything, it would make perfect sense when you consider that Arthurian legend is no more consistent than Greek mythology in terms of different iterations of it.
True.
The Doctor is just fucking up history.
Yeah, it's just there was a lot of fan backlash against it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. The show was already over by then anyway.
They thought it was a jump the shark moment.
I think that's jumping the shark.
Okay then.
That's all I'm saying from what people responded to the episodes when they came out. Is they thought that was too far-fetched for their own belief that the Doctor's actually Merlin.
So they say about a man who travels through time and space inside of a police box.
That's part of the premise of the show, but Matt.
Yes, and is that any less ridiculous than the man who runs it being Merlin?
Considering, although Merlin was supposed to be responsible for Stonehenge, and the monk says he's the one who's responsible for that. Merlin is just a collection of rogue Time Lords that happen to visit the same time in the same part of time space. I'm sure the Master has part of his own part to play in Merlin's history.
Maybe. But that's a plot story for another idea, for another time. Story idea for another time. So, what's the average then on this one? 3.5, 3.5, 4.5?
Are you going with the 4 or the 4.5?
I'll go with the 4.5.
So that puts us at 11.5 divided by 3, which is like a 4.1 something something.
No, 11.5 divided by 3 is
Oh no, never mind.
3.8.
I was thinking, yeah, I added 1 to the total before dividing. Sorry.
Smack. So 3.8. Above average. Very nearly close to good. Again, maybe me and Bill need to see this more to quite get it, but
I mean,
it wasn't horrible, and it sort of just happened.
I'm sure I'll watch it many times anyway because it is part of my favorite season of Doctor Who. Period.
So yeah. On that note, that's probably a good place to close this, and we'll see everybody next week. I assume
When were we
doing
doing Dimensions in Time?
Are we doing that tonight?
When were we doing that one?
Oh. Well, it was going to be part of the 7th Doctor thing, or we could do it along with the movie.
It's a horrible episode. Don't watch it. Half a star. And the only reason it rates half a star is because it's Pertwee's last performance as the Doctor.
and Tom Baker's last live performance.
He doesn't appear. I don't think he appears as the Doctor. He appears as John Pertwee. I don't think he appears in uniform.
Oh, yes, he does.
Does he? So he appears as John and as the Doctor? Because I know he appears as John.
As the Doctor, dude.
He definitely appears as John Pertwee with 3D glasses, talking to the people out. You know, the people who are introducing the special.
I don't know what version of the special you had, but if that was happening, that had happened outside of the actual credits, so therefore it doesn't count. It's like John Barrowman introducing the special.
Yeah,
no, that's what I thought that was all John Pertwee appeared in Dimensions in Time.
No,
he is actually in there, dude. I don't know. Yeah, again, I don't know what version you saw, but I've seen Nash's review, and he was definitely in there as the third Doctor.
Okay, so then I did just him appearing as John overshadowed him appearing as the Doctor, I guess.
Apparently for you, yeah. So yeah, Dimensions in Time, don't watch it. Bye.
For, what was it, 15 minutes of YouTube time, there are worse ways to spend your time.
I'd rather watch YouTube poop.
There's better ways than spend your time. Being sick with intestinal flu is a better way to spend your time.
I'd rather watch it than Journey to the Center of the TARDIS.
Okay, I'll give that.
I'll give you that, yeah.
No, I'd rather watch Journey to the Center of the TARDIS because then I don't have to hear that opening theme.
I get the feeling I'm about to regret something, and with that,